I was standing in the kitchen making coffee when the envelope arrived. It had the state seal on it, Department of Health embossed across the top, and my name typed in that impersonal government font. I set my mug down and opened it right there by the window, still wearing yesterday's shirt. The letter was dated 3 weeks after we buried Rachel. This office has received a formal request to review the circumstances surrounding the death of Rachel Ann Keller, deceased March 14th per State Statute 194.11. A medical examiner's inquiry has been initiated. You are listed as next of kin. Please contact our office within 10 business days to discuss findings and next steps. I read it twice. Then I sat down at the table and read it again. Rachel had been dead for 6 months. We buried her in April, a cold gray morning with hardly anyone there. My sister had been 41 years old, living alone in a rental duplex on the east side of town. When the landlord found her, she'd been gone for 2 days. Heart failure, they said. Sudden, tragic, but not suspicious. No autopsy, no investigation. Just a death certificate signed by her primary care doctor, and a funeral 3 days later that our mother planned without asking me a single question. I hadn't requested a review. I didn't even know you could. So who did? I called the number on the letter. A woman answered, polite and efficient, and transferred me to an investigator named Dr. Brennan. He had a low, careful voice, the kind that doesn't rush you but doesn't waste time either. Miss Keller, he said, thank you for calling. I wanted to speak with you directly before moving forward. I don't understand what's happening, I said. Why now? She's been buried for months. Yes, I'm aware. The request came from an outside party, a pharmacist who filled prescriptions for your sister in the months before her death. He flagged inconsistencies in her medication records and contacted our office. Once we reviewed the initial documentation, we felt it warranted further examination. I gripped the phone tighter. What kind of inconsistencies? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I can tell you we've opened a formal inquiry, and depending on what we find, we may need to pursue an exhumation and full autopsy. The word hit me like cold water. Exhumation. I'll need you to come in, Dr. Brennan said. Bring any documents you have, medical records, insurance paperwork, anything related to her care in the last year. Can you do that? Yes? Good. Let's start there. I hung up and sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time, staring at the letter. Rachel and I hadn't been close, not in years. We grew up in the same house, shared the same parents, the same schools, the same early memories. But somewhere in our 20s, we drifted. She struggled with anxiety, then depression, then a string of bad relationships that left her isolated and exhausted. I tried to help, but she pushed me away. By the time she was 40, we spoke maybe twice a year, brief and surface level like acquaintances. When she died, I felt guilty more than sad, guilty that I hadn't tried harder, guilty that I wasn't surprised. Our mother took over everything, the arrangements, the service, the cremation, no-wait burial. She insisted on burial. I remember that now. I'd suggested cremation because Rachel once mentioned she didn't want a fuss, but Mom shut that down immediately. She wanted a grave, a headstone, something permanent. I didn't argue. I was too tired, and I assumed she was grieving in her own way. But now, sitting there with that letter in my hands, I started to replay the details. The funeral had been strange. Small. Just Mom, me, a couple of Rachel's old co-workers, and one neighbor. No service, really. Just a graveside gathering that lasted maybe 20 minutes. The casket was closed. I never saw Rachel's body. I asked once if I could, but Mom said it wasn't a good idea. She'd been alone for 2 days, she said. It was better to remember her as she was. I didn't push. Mom cried quietly, holding a tissue, but she didn't fall apart. She seemed composed, almost organized. She handed out printed prayers, thanked people for coming, and left before I did. When I tried to talk to her afterward, she said she needed time alone. I respected that. I hadn't spoken to her much since. A few texts, one phone call around her birthday. She didn't bring up Rachel, and neither did I. Now I wondered what I'd missed. I went to the county clerk's office the next day and requested copies of Rachel's death certificate, the medical examiner's initial report, if there was one, and any related paperwork. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with glasses on a chain, and she moved slowly, methodically pulling files from a database that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2005. Here, she said finally, sliding a thin stack of papers across the counter. Death certificate, physician's statement, and a notation that no autopsy was performed due to lack of indication. I scanned the physician's statement. It was signed by Dr. Lawrence Hoff, Rachel's primary care doctor. Cause of death: acute cardiac event, underlying cardiomyopathy, no trauma, no signs of foul play, body released to family. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but the signature was there, neat and official. Is there anything else? The clerk asked. Was there any request for investigation at the time? Not according to this file. What about the family? Did they request no autopsy? She looked at me over her glasses. If someone requests no autopsy and the attending physician agrees, it's not documented here. You'd have to ask the doctor. I thanked her and left. Dr. Hoff's office was in a medical plaza near the hospital. One of those generic buildings with beige carpeting and motivational posters in the waiting room. I didn't have an appointment, but I told the receptionist I needed to speak with him about my sister, and after a 15-minute wait, she led me back. Dr. Hoff was older, maybe mid-60s, with thinning hair and a tired smile. He stood when I entered and shook my hand. Miss Keller, I'm so sorry for your loss. Rachel was a patient here for several years. Thank you. I just have a few questions, if that's okay. Of course. Please, sit. I sat across from him, trying to keep my voice steady. When Rachel died, you signed the death certificate. You listed heart failure. That's correct. Did you see her body? He hesitated, just a fraction of a second. I reviewed the report from the responding paramedics and corroborated it with her medical history. She had documented heart issues, cardiomyopathy, arrhythmia. Given her age and condition, sudden cardiac death was consistent. But you didn't see her. No, I didn't. In cases where the cause is clear and there's no indication of trauma or suspicious circumstances, a visual examination isn't always required. Who decided there wouldn't be an autopsy? Another pause. Her next of kin. Your mother. I felt something tighten in my chest. Did she say why? She said Rachel wouldn't have wanted it. She was very firm about that. I nodded slowly. Did you ever prescribe Rachel any medications for her heart? Yes. Beta blockers, AC inhibitors, standard management for her condition. What about anything else? Sedatives, painkillers. He frowned slightly. I prescribed a low-dose benzodiazepine for her anxiety, but nothing beyond that. Why do you ask? I'm just trying to understand. Thank you for your time. I left before he could ask more questions. That night I went through every box I had from Rachel's apartment. After she died, the landlord had cleared out her things and dropped them off at my place in 4 taped-up boxes. I hadn't opened them. I'd stacked them in the garage and told myself I'd deal with them later. Now I pulled them inside and started going through them methodically. Clothes, books, old mail, a jewelry box with nothing valuable inside, a folder with bills, receipts, appointment reminders, and then, near the bottom of the 3rd box, a Ziploc bag with 4 prescription bottles. I spread them out on the floor. 3 were from Dr. Hoff's office, metoprolol, lisinopril, lorazepam. Standard, like he said. The 4th was different. It was from a pharmacy I didn't recognize across town, and the label listed a medication I'd never heard of, clozapine. Prescribed by a Dr. M. Vargas. Refill date 2 weeks before Rachel died. I looked it up on my phone. Clozapine, an antipsychotic, used for schizophrenia and severe bipolar disorder. High risk of side effects, including cardiac complications. Requires regular blood monitoring. Rachel didn't have schizophrenia. She'd never been diagnosed with anything like that. I checked the other bottles again. Nothing else from Dr. Vargas. Nothing else unusual. I took a photo of the label and put the bottle in my bag. The next morning I called the pharmacy. A young guy answered, distracted like I was interrupting something. Yeah. We filled that, he said when I read him the prescription number. March 2nd. Can you tell me who authorized it? Says here Dr. Vargas. But it was called in by someone else. Let me check. A pause. Yeah, okay, so the original script was from Vargas, but the refill request came from a family member. We verified it with the doctor's office. What family member? Doesn't say. Just says authorized representative. Do you remember who picked it up? No idea. Could have been anyone. We don't always check ID if it's a refill. I thanked him and hung up. Authorized representative. I called Dr. Brennan. He answered on the second ring, and I told him everything. The prescription, the pharmacy, Dr. Hoff, the lack of autopsy. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Miss Keller, he said finally, I'm going to need that prescription bottle. Can you bring it to my office today?
Yes.
And I'm going to need you to prepare yourself. If what you're suggesting is accurate, this is going to get complicated. I understand. Good, I'll see you this afternoon. I met Dr. Brennan in a small office inside the county medical examiner's building, a blocky concrete structure that smelled like disinfectant and old paper. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with dark-rimmed glasses and a precise, methodical way of moving. He took the prescription bottle, examined the label, and made notes on a yellow legal pad. Do you know who Dr. Vargas is? I asked. Yes, he's a psychiatrist, practices out of a behavioral health clinic downtown. I'm going to contact him and request Rachel's records. Can he refuse? Not if we have cause, and we do. He looked at me directly. I also want to ask you about your mother. I felt my stomach drop. What about her? She was the one who refused the autopsy. She was also listed as Rachel's medical power of attorney, which means she could authorize prescriptions and medical decisions on Rachel's behalf. I didn't know that. When was it established? I have no idea. He made another note. We'll find out. In the meantime, I need to know, do you have any reason to believe your mother would have wanted to harm Rachel? I opened my mouth, then closed it. Did I? I thought about the funeral, the closed casket, the speed of it all, the way Mom had refused to let me see Rachel's body, refused to discuss anything, refused to let me be involved. I don't know, I said finally. But something wasn't right. Then we'll find out what it was. 2 weeks later, Dr. Brennan called me again. We've reviewed Rachel's medical records from Dr. Vargas, he said. She was never his patient. I felt the floor tilt. What? The prescriptions were authorized using a falsified patient file. Someone created an intake record under Rachel's name, forged her signature, and requested the medication. Dr. Vargas's office didn't verify it closely because the person calling in the refills claimed to be family and knew enough personal information to sound legitimate. Who was it? Who were working on that? But there's more. The clozapine Rachel was taking is dangerous if not monitored. It can cause severe cardiac issues, especially in someone with pre-existing heart disease. If she was taking it without supervision, it could have easily triggered the kind of event that killed her. I couldn't breathe. So someone gave her that medication knowing it could kill her. That's what it looks like. My mother? He didn't answer right away. We don't have proof yet, but we've requested a court order to exhume Rachel's body and perform a full autopsy, if there are elevated levels of clozapine in her system. And if we can trace the prescription back to your mother, then yes. This becomes a criminal investigation. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Miss Keller, I'm here. I know this is hard, but we're going to get answers. The exhumation happened on a cold morning in October. I wasn't there, Dr. Brennan told me it was better if I wasn't, and I agreed. I didn't want to see them pull Rachel out of the ground. Instead, I waited. Days turned into weeks. I kept working, kept moving, kept my phone close. I didn't call my mother. I didn't tell her what was happening. I just waited. When Dr. Brennan finally called, his voice was calm but heavy. The autopsy is complete, he said. Rachel had lethal levels of clozapine in her system. Combined with her heart condition, it caused a fatal arrhythmia. This wasn't an accident. I closed my eyes. We've also traced the prescription activity. Your mother was listed as Rachel's power of attorney as of January, 3 months before Rachel died. She called in the refills. She picked up the medication. And based on pharmacy logs, she was the only one with access. Why? I whispered. I don't know. But the county prosecutor has been notified. She'll be contacted for questioning. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. What happens now? That's up to the prosecutor. But this is evidence of manslaughter at minimum, possibly more. I thanked him and hung up. I sat in my car in a parking lot, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. I thought about Rachel, about how small her world had become in those last years, how alone she'd been, how easy it must have been for Mom to step in, to take control, to make decisions Rachel never agreed to. I thought about the funeral, the closed casket, the hurry, and I thought about the will. I hadn't seen Rachel's will. Mom handled all of that too. But Rachel had owned her car, had a small savings account, maybe some life insurance through an old job. Not much, but something. I called the county probate office. The clerk pulled up Rachel's file and read through it while I waited. Yes, she said finally. Her estate was settled in May. Beneficiary was listed as Patricia Keller. That's your mother. Yes. Everything went to her. About $32,000 in savings and a life insurance payout of $50,000. All transferred, case closed. I thanked her and ended the call. $82,000. That's what Rachel's life had been worth. The arrest happened 3 weeks later. I wasn't there for that either. But I heard about it from Dr. Brennan. Mom was taken in for questioning, and when they presented the evidence, pharmacy records, the falsified medical files, the autopsy results, she didn't deny it. She didn't confess outright, but she didn't fight. She just sat there silent while her lawyer took notes. She was charged with second-degree manslaughter and fraud. Bail was set. She posted it and went home. I didn't see her. She didn't call me, and I didn't call her. The case moved slowly, the way these things do. Lawyers, depositions, motions. I gave a statement. I handed over everything I had, prescriptions, documents, timelines. I sat in a conference room with a prosecutor named Ellen Vasquez, a sharp woman in her 50s who spoke in clipped, efficient sentences, and told her everything I knew. Why do you think she did it? Ellen asked. I don't know. Were they close? No. Rachel didn't talk to her much. Was there animosity? Not that I saw. Just distance. Ellen made a note. Sometimes that's enough. The trial was set for the following spring. I was listed as a witness. In the months leading up to it, I tried to go back to normal. I worked. I went to the gym. I saw friends, though I didn't tell them what was happening. It felt too heavy, too surreal. How do you explain that your mother killed your sister for money you didn't even know existed? But at night alone, I thought about it constantly. I thought about how quiet it had been. How simple. A prescription here, a refill there. A power of attorney signed in some office I'd never heard of. A closed casket. A rushed burial. No one had questioned it. Not the doctor. Not the funeral home. Not me. Because why would we? The trial lasted 4 days. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as the prosecutor laid it all out. The medical records, the falsified documents, the pharmacy logs, the autopsy results. They called Dr. Brennan. They called the pharmacist who'd flagged the prescriptions. They called Dr. Hoff, who admitted he'd signed the death certificate without examining Rachel's body, trusting the family's account. And then they called me. I walked to the witness stand, swore the oath, and sat down. Ellen Vasquez stood a few feet away, hands folded, voice steady. Miss Keller, when did you first learn your sister was taking clozapine? After she died. I found the prescription in her belongings. Did she ever mention it to you? No. Did your mother ever mention it? No. When your sister died, were you involved in the arrangements? No. My mother handled everything. Did you see your sister's body? No. Why not? My mother said it wasn't a good idea. Ellen paused. Did you ask why? Yes. She said Rachel had been alone for 2 days and that it was better to remember her as she was. Did you believe her? I looked at my mother. She was sitting at the defense table, hands in her lap, staring straight ahead. She didn't look at me. Yes, I said. I did. The defense argued diminished capacity, caregiver burnout, a misunderstanding of dosage. They painted Mom as overwhelmed, confused, acting out of misguided concern. They suggested Rachel might have been taking the medication on her own, that Mom had simply refilled it without understanding the risks. But the pharmacy logs didn't support that. The falsified intake records didn't support that. The power of attorney, signed 3 months before Rachel's death, didn't support that. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on 1 count of second-degree manslaughter. Guilty on 2 counts of fraud. Sentencing was set for 8 weeks later. I didn't stay for the verdict. I walked out of the courtroom, got in my car, and drove home. I sat in my kitchen, the same place I'd been when the letter arrived, and I didn't cry. I just sat there, feeling the weight of it settle. When sentencing came, I wasn't there. I read about it later. 7 years eligible for parole and 5. Restitution to Rachel's estate, though there was nothing left to repay. I never spoke to my mother again. I didn't visit her. I didn't write. I didn't attend the appeals, and I didn't respond when her lawyer reached out asking for a statement of support. I just let her go. In the months after, I thought a lot about silence. About how much happens in the spaces we don't look at, the questions we don't ask. I thought about how easy it is to trust someone just because you're supposed to, and how much damage that trust can do when it's misplaced. I thought about Rachel, and how lonely she must have been, how invisible. I sold her headstone and replaced it with something simple. Just her name and the years. No scripture, no platitudes. I visit sometimes when the weather's good. I don't say much. I just sit there and think about who she might have been if someone had paid attention. I think about the pharmacist who noticed something wasn't right and made the call. I never met him, but I think about him a lot. How he didn't have to care. How he did anyway. I don't know if there's a lesson in any of this. I don't think there is. Some things just happen, and you live with them, and that's all. But I do know this. I'll never assume silence means peace again, and I'll never trust someone just because they're supposed to be trustworthy. If you've ever stayed quiet long enough to finally see what was really happening, you're not alone.